What's up, everyone? We're going to go over this Orange Rockerverb on the GT-1000. As you can see here, these are my settings, and we went over this on stream. So if you want to catch the streams for when I do dial in these tones, they'll be every Friday at roughly 5 p.m., 5:30 p.m. Pacific. This is the amp model. I want to explore a few things I did. My IRs and everything also will be linked below, so you can go and blend them the same way that I did. With every model on Boss's GT-1000, I actually put an EQ block before the cabinet and the amp preamp block. And that is because, in my opinion, Boss made their amp models to work with certain IRs, and they just don't work well with many IRs. So what I usually have to do is I put an EQ block in between. And what this does is it helps me either add the presence that I feel like is missing because the IR and the amp block are just not like gelling very well, or reduce frequencies that are harmonically not nice. So the tone that you heard in the intro was with this EQ block, and it sounds like this. This is what it sounds like when I turn off that EQ block like this. So you can see how having that EQ block there actually really helps. Basically what I'm hearing is kind of just an exaggeration of the lower mids that Orange amps usually have. And so I cut about 500 hertz by about 3 dB to give it kind of a smoother character in that lower region. And I also added some of a little bit of presence on the top. That is mostly because of the guitars I use, so you probably don't need that. With the amp model itself, I actually run it quite scooped, so there's a lot of bass. Orange amps typically don't have like really low end bass, so what I ended up doing is I just add a lot of bass to it. In that EQ block I mentioned earlier, I cut a lot of that mid bass that's coming out. And then the mids, if I crank the mids too much, it gets a little too honky. We have the mids at like 70, and this is what it sounds like. That just doesn't really sound nice to me. If I scoop the mids out like this is what you get instead. So this is kind of generally how I feel this amp should be set up. The amp actually doesn't need that much gain at the high gain switch level here, so I have it on the high gain switch, and basically at 45 is fine. When I started without a boost, so if I turn this boost off and I raise this up to 60, it sounded pretty good. The problem with that is the low end is really flubby without a boost, so I ended up having to add a boost to it, and adding a boost, you kind of inherently add gain to the front of a preamp, so I had to lower the gain from 60 to about 45. The boost that we decided to use on stream was a mid boost, which I'm guessing is some kind of older tube screamer of some sort, because there's also a tube screamer model here. This model actually adds quite a bit of like distortion compared to the mid boost, so we wanted something a little cleaner but still gave us a little bit of a mid boost. So we used the mid boost here, basically just straight up tone. We tightened it a little bit with the bottom control here, and the level's at 100. We are pushing the front of the amp quite hard here with that solo switch right here. However, I think it sounds better with the boost pushing that front end. And here's what that sounds like. So it's a lot tighter now, it's a lot more modern sounding, and I think I like it a lot more. And so overall, what do I think about this patch? I think it's really good. I think I think from what I remember from what other reviewers for Orange amps actually say is that Orange is really good at like getting a very specific tone. This one kind of achieves that, and basically you get kind of a modern distortion saturation character, but with a bit more of a fuzzy sort of chewiness. You can hear the fuzz if you just play like something, a regular chord, you just hear that fuzziness on the top. And that fuzziness actually kind of helps to add a little bit to the soundscape when you're playing in a mix. But with the boost in front, it actually does tighten it up quite a bit. And I think Boss did a pretty good job at this amp. This one and the Bogner that I'm going to be reviewing at some point have been really good additions to the GT-1000, and my only point of feedback is I wish there were more. Let's add some reverb and a delay and get some lead tones going. So here we have basically the same amp setup going with the amp model here, but I also added an EQ just to boost it a bit. So for live, I would just boost with this EQ, and then we have a delay and a reverb here. And this is what it sounds like. Yeah, I think it sounds amazing actually. For the leads, basically because of the orange character of lower mids, the high notes actually sound quite fat and a bit more defined and not quite as shrill as some other amps I use, like the Marshall. And it's kind of cool. Overall, I do like this amp model quite a bit. I think I probably will be using it for the rest of this week. I'll be doing streams every Friday in the afternoon, just kind of chatting, chilling, and dialing in a tone, and I'll be using that as the main tone for the streams for the upcoming week on Twitch. So follow the links below, and yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this dive into this amp model for metal. And yeah, so thank you all so much. I will see you all in the next one. Later.